At the Royal Foundation Gala, all eyes were on Catherine in her stunning gown, until Princess Charlotte leaned in and whispered something that stopped the entire room cold. What she said wasn't loud, but it hit like thunder. Within seconds, Catherine's poised smile faltered, Queen Camilla's expression stiffened, and the atmosphere shifted. Lip readers scrambled, insiders whispered, and the footage exploded online. It wasn't just a child's comment. It was a truth the crown couldn't hide. The gala that had the whole palace watching. The Royal Foundation Gala on the evening of May 17, 2025, hosted inside the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace, was meant to be a celebration of royal charity milestones, but instead became a historic moment. The high-profile event gathered over 300 guests, including foreign dignitaries, royal patrons, and senior Commonwealth leaders. The presence of Princess Charlotte, then aged 10, signaled something rare and intentional. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a debut. After weeks of speculation, she was introduced to the global stage not as a child, but as the future. Her appearance was carefully calculated. Flanked by Princess Catherine and Prince William, Charlotte entered in a royal blue gown inspired by Queen Elizabeth's favorite shade, a subtle homage to the monarch who passed in September 2022. Her posture was straight, her gaze confident. Photographers noted how effortlessly she walked beside her mother, mirroring Catherine's calm composure. It became instantly clear that Charlotte wasn't there to simply observe. She was present to represent. She had been briefed, dressed, and emotionally prepared for this entrance. Royal watchers described the atmosphere inside the palace as tightly wound. From the moment 6:45 p.m. struck and the procession began, the attention shifted toward Catherine and Charlotte. While Catherine wore Diana's 1995 sapphire bracelet, a piece she'd only worn once before, Charlotte's dress alone began trending within 30 minutes online. Her growing resemblance to Queen Elizabeth and Diana created a cascade of emotional associations for guests, many of whom had known those women personally. And yet, the real moment that changed everything didn't happen during a speech or toast. It happened in silence, in a whisper between mother and daughter that cameras caught, but microphones missed. What looked like a fleeting exchange became the viral catalyst that shook the room. And the ripples started with the person least expected to cause a stir: Charlotte. As the music played softly and guests were guided to their tables, the camera's focus remained fixed on Catherine and Charlotte. Unknown to many, a single whispered sentence had just changed the emotional current of the evening. What came next would only deepen the shift. Catherine's show-stopping entrance. Princess Catherine arrived at precisely 7 p.m., wearing a custom Alexander McQueen gown embroidered with 12,000 hand-stitched beads. The designer, closely associated with many of her most iconic looks since 2011, had created this gown with deliberate echoes of Diana's 1991 Paris ensemble. Paired with the sapphire and diamond bracelet worn by Diana at the Vanity Fair Gala in 1995, the styling wasn't just elegant, it was historically intentional. In royal circles, such choices are read like political signals, and this one spoke loudly. Standing beside her, Charlotte's dress, a sleek royal blue velvet ensemble with a subtle silver belt, had been custom designed to echo one of Queen Elizabeth's coronation sketches from 1953. This attention to detail didn't go unnoticed by royal watchers. Within minutes, fashion correspondents online began posting side-by-side images comparing the late monarch to her great-granddaughter. This was more than presentation. It was continuity. And in the silence of the hall, even the most jaded political attendees paused to absorb it. Catherine held Charlotte's hand, as they moved gracefully into the main banquet room. King Charles III, seated near the center table, turned and offered a smile, while Queen Camilla, already seated, raised her glass in their direction. Photographers captured Catherine's warm, measured smile as she nodded in acknowledgement. Yet, her attention remained grounded in Charlotte. The image of the two walking side by side, one the present, the other the future, was broadcast globally before the first course was served. But beneath the glamour, something stirred. Just as they paused at the reception display, a portrait of Diana framed in gold for the anniversary of her August 31st, 1997 passing, Charlotte leaned in. Cameras caught it. The lean, the whisper, and Catherine's startled expression. What looked like a mother-daughter exchange suddenly took on historic weight. That brief whisper, nearly drowned out by a string quartet playing softly in the background, would be analyzed for days. No one knew exactly what had been said, but the emotional impact was evident on Catherine's face. The next morning, lip readers would solve the mystery, and it would shift the narrative of the night entirely. The whisper everyone noticed, but no one heard. The moment Princess Charlotte leaned in at 7:18 p.m. and whispered to her mother, royal correspondents took note instantly. Catherine, known for her near-perfect control, froze for 2 seconds. Her hand gripped Charlotte's gently, her gaze lifted subtly across the room, toward Queen Camilla. A smile returned to her face just moments later, but the shift had already happened. It was picked up on live feeds, televised in 14 countries, and viewed by over 3.1 million people within hours. Journalists stationed nearby remarked that Catherine looked momentarily moved, not by shock, but by a wave of emotion. One royal aide, speaking anonymously, said, "We've never seen her hesitate like that." When the footage was slowed down and enhanced, viewers could make out the delicate tightening of her jaw. Online forums and Twitter exploded with speculation, using the timestamp 1918-37 as a marker to dissect every frame. What did Charlotte say? Became the dominant question across headlines the next morning. Within 12 hours, at least 3 certified lip readers analyzed the footage. Their consensus, published in The Times and The Telegraph, revealed the words, "Mummy, she's wearing Grandma's crown, but it should be yours." The grandma was Diana, the she was Camilla, and the crown in question was Queen Mary's diadem, resting on Camilla's head just across the room. For a child of just 10 years old, the comment was piercing, emotionally articulate, and brutally observant. The gravity wasn't just in the words, it was in who said them and when. This wasn't a staged political moment. It was raw, unrehearsed, and deeply sincere. Catherine's emotional pause and silent response told the story. She didn't correct her daughter. She simply held her hand, looked down, and smiled. Not a word spoken, yet the message was heard around the world. From that point on, the gala's tone shifted. Guests began noticing Catherine's distant gaze, Camilla's stiff posture, and Charlotte's quiet confidence. What had started as a celebration of charity now bore the weight of royal memory, rivalry, and a child's powerful perception. And the night was only just beginning. What Charlotte allegedly said. By the morning of May 18, 2025, the lip reader's interpretation was everywhere. Charlotte's whisper, caught just before the first course was served, had echoed through media outlets, newsrooms, and public forums. "Mummy, she's wearing Grandma's crown, but it should be yours." The sentence was brief, just 11 words, but it peeled back the layers of tension inside Buckingham Palace. For Princess Catherine, hearing those words from her 10-year-old daughter struck a chord she could not have anticipated. It wasn't rudeness, it was legacy speaking through innocence. Catherine's immediate reaction revealed more than any press statement ever could. Her stunned pause lasted exactly 2.5 seconds, long enough to register visibly on the broadcast and spark murmurs among nearby guests. According to palace aides seated 3 tables away, Catherine gently squeezed Charlotte's hand and offered a soft nod. She didn't scold or silence her daughter. Instead, she recognized the weight of what had been said. One guest later shared, "It looked like Catherine saw a ghost, not of Diana, but of the truth." Camilla, seated just 14 feet away, had not heard the whisper, but she caught Catherine's expression. Royal photographers snapped a telling shot of Queen Camilla glancing sideways, brows furrowed. The tension at the main table thickened. Guests described an emotional shift as soon as dinner began. Conversations turned hushed. Champagne flutes clinked, but laughter faded. It was clear something had been said, and whatever it was, had touched nerves still raw after decades of royal history. Charlotte's words were more than a comment about jewelry. They echoed the sentiment held by millions across the UK and Commonwealth since Diana's death in 1997. That Catherine, not Camilla, was the true continuation of the late princess's legacy. That even a child, raised with grace and discretion, could see what the public had long believed. The remark was pure and unscripted, but it rewrote the script of the entire night. That singular moment, Charlotte's whisper, Catherine's pause, Camilla's reaction, sent a ripple across Buckingham's gilded hall. But it was what came next, as the camera turned back toward the Queen Consort, that revealed just how fragile royal composure can truly be under the weight of legacy. The meaning behind the crown. Charlotte mentioned. The crown that caused such stir, Queen Mary's diamond bandeau, was no ordinary accessory. Created in 1919, it had been passed down to Queen Elizabeth and selectively worn during only the most formal royal occasions. Diana wore it once, during a visit to Hong Kong in 1989, and the image of her draped in silver silk, with that crown resting atop her head, became one of her most iconic looks. For Camilla to wear it now, especially during a high-profile event featuring Catherine and Charlotte, felt loaded. According to insiders close to the royal vault, the diadem had been quietly reassigned to Camilla in 2023, shortly after Charles's coronation. Many expected Catherine to inherit it, or at the very least, have shared access. The Queen's private diaries, according to biographer Sarah Grayson, hinted that she hoped the crown would eventually rest on the head of the next mother of the monarchy. While the Queen never publicly named names, many assumed that title referred to Catherine, not Camilla. Charlotte's mention of the crown wasn't about fashion, it was about memory. Photographs of Diana in that very piece lined books, posters, and collector plates throughout the 1990s. In 2025, these images are still shared on social media platforms, viewed by over 25 million users annually. Charlotte, raised on stories and private family photographs, would have undoubtedly recognized the crown not just as a royal artifact, but as part of her grandmother's story. Camilla, by contrast, has rarely acknowledged Diana's legacy directly. Her wearing of the diadem was interpreted by some insiders as a quiet assertion of supremacy, proof that the past had been buried. But with one whisper, Charlotte reminded the entire room and the watching world that memory is not so easily overwritten. A crown may rest on a head, but legacy lives in the hearts of those who remember. The emotional tension didn't fade after that moment. It deepened. Camilla's discomfort became visible to anyone paying close attention. The rest of the evening would prove that no amount of pageantry could mask a look that spoke louder than words. And that look was about to come. Why the comment cut so deep? For Queen Camilla, the evening had been carefully orchestrated. Her team had planned her arrival at 6:52 p.m. Her gown had been approved by royal stylists a week earlier, and the crown she wore was chosen after 3 separate consultations with Charles's advisors. But none of that planning accounted for a child's honesty or the emotional unraveling that followed. The look she gave Catherine wasn't rehearsed. It was real, and it revealed everything. The camera caught it clearly. A quick glance, narrowed eyes, lips tightened in an almost imperceptible scowl. For a moment, that lasted less than 4 seconds, Camilla's mask slipped. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Analysts reviewing the footage later compared it to her expressions during Diana's funeral in 1997 and again during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. Moments when Camilla, under public scrutiny, had to control emotion in full view. This time she failed. Insiders seated near Camilla later claimed she grew quieter after that glance. She barely touched her main course and avoided eye contact with Catherine during toasts. When the royal photographer asked for a group portrait at 8:20 p.m., Camilla reportedly declined. Aides tried to downplay it, citing a mild migraine, but the staff knew better. She had been emotionally blindsided, not by a rival, but by the granddaughter of the woman she once replaced. For Catherine, the moment was equally charged. She didn't return the glance. She remained serene, composed. Her hands gently resting on Charlotte's shoulders during photos. But that poise came with weight. She had just heard her daughter speak the quiet truth of the monarchy, that public love cannot be inherited by title alone. And as the night wore on, it became increasingly clear. Camilla wore the crown, but Catherine wore the people's favor. The look Camilla gave across that banquet table wasn't about jealousy. It was about recognition. In that glance, she saw the ghost of Diana in Charlotte's words and the power of the future in Catherine's silence. And as the music played on, the Queen Consort quietly disappeared from the spotlight. The room reacts. As the formal dinner continued into the 9 p.m. hour, royal insiders noted a distinct change in the room's tone. Guests who were previously chatting freely grew quieter. One Scandinavian diplomat, seated 3 tables from the royal dais, reportedly commented, "Something has shifted." Indeed, the once buoyant evening now hummed with tension. Princess Catherine's serene composure did little to mask the emotional tremor that had spread following Charlotte's whisper and Camilla's glance. Queen Camilla, who had been scheduled to give brief remarks around 9:15 p.m., opted to cancel them. An aide stepped in with a vague apology, citing unexpected fatigue. But by then, speculation was already spinning behind the scenes. Prince Edward was seen whispering discreetly to Sophie Wessex, while a foreign press attaché noted that Catherine and William had not spoken directly to Camilla since the main course. A once unified royal front now appeared fragmented, if not fractured. It was Princess Charlotte, ironically, who returned the room to a sense of order. As cameras focused on her once more during the final toast, she was seen smiling gently and offering her grandmother, Carol Middleton, a small wave across the room. The gesture, simple, sweet, human, reminded the audience of the younger generation's clarity. Several guests reportedly clapped softly after the final toast, with some eyes visibly misty. What began as a whisper had turned into a defining statement of presence. Even the staff sensed the gravity of the moment. A senior butler with over 22 years at Buckingham Palace later said, "I've served under 4 monarchs, but I've never seen a moment like that. It felt like we were watching the future lean in. That future wasn't just William and Catherine. It now visibly included Charlotte, who had unexpectedly joined the royal narrative not with pomp, but with piercing honesty. As the gala drew to a close, what lingered wasn't the applause or the menu. It was the emotional shadow left by one child's remark and the silent weight of a queen's stare. And yet, the night wasn't quite finished. There would still be reactions behind closed doors, some quieter, some devastating. What this reveals about Charlotte's upbringing. For the public, the whisper was a sensation. But for royal observers, it was something deeper. A glimpse into how Princess Charlotte has been raised. Unlike previous generations, Charlotte has not been shielded from the emotional complexity of her heritage. Under Catherine's care, her exposure to Diana's legacy, stories of duty, and even heartbreak has been framed with truth and warmth. By age 10, she has a stronger grasp on symbolism than many adults in the room. Catherine, who has been praised for her modern, grounded approach to parenting, reportedly includes storytelling about Diana during family evenings at Adelaide Cottage, where they moved in 2022. According to biographers, Charlotte's bedtime stories often include tales of Queen Elizabeth, Diana, and the importance of legacy. It's no accident that Charlotte understood the emotional meaning behind a crown worn by Camilla. It's part of her family's living memory. The princess's education also reflects this depth. At Thomas's Battersea, where she began studies in 2019, teachers have noted her empathy and sharp observation skills. One former instructor told The Times that Charlotte listens more than she speaks, but when she speaks, it lands. That statement came to life at the gala. She may not hold a royal title beyond her name yet, but Charlotte has already demonstrated emotional intelligence rarely seen at her age. This moment also marks a generational shift. Where previous royals were taught silence and stoicism, Charlotte is being raised in an era that values emotional literacy. The whisper wasn't a breach of protocol. It was the result of a child being taught to observe and reflect. And while it may have unsettled Camilla, for the public, it underscored the promise of a future monarchy that is more aware, more human, and more connected to truth. With that awareness, the next generation isn't just stepping into the spotlight. They're quietly rewriting how royalty communicates. And as we turn our eyes to Queen Camilla's response behind palace doors, it becomes clear. Some truths, once spoken, cannot be ignored. Camilla's reaction behind closed doors. As guests departed Buckingham Palace by 10:45 p.m., insiders reported that Queen Camilla was escorted out a private side entrance, accompanied by only 2 senior aides. Upon arrival at Clarence House, her team expected a debrief, but were instead met with a cold, echoing silence. Camilla reportedly walked upstairs alone and refused to speak to anyone for over 2 hours. It was a personal retreat into emotional isolation. According to one palace source, Camilla was visibly shaken and more disturbed than we've seen her since Prince Harry's spare release in 2023. While her reaction wasn't dramatic, it was telling. The whisper hadn't just rattled her. It had reopened wounds buried under years of PR rehabilitation. She had worked hard to rebrand her public image from the other woman to Queen Consort. But one whisper from a 10-year-old had cracked that image wide open again. Discussions the following morning centered around press strategy. Aides proposed highlighting Camilla's upcoming engagements and downplaying the tiara moment. However, leaked footage and headlines had already spread globally. One viral video reached 8.7 million views in just 48 hours. Attempts to shift the narrative were met with mockery online, with commenters calling the palace out of touch, or pretending nothing had happened. Behind palace doors, Charles was reportedly silent. Some insiders speculated he was torn, caught between defending his wife and acknowledging the sentiment behind Charlotte's words. William, on the other hand, is believed to have told staff, "Let it breathe. The people know what they saw." And indeed, they did. The look Camilla gave Catherine wasn't lost in translation. It was an emotional confession the whole world understood. While the monarchy often relies on tradition and time to quiet scandals, this was different. Because this wasn't a scandal, it was a truth laid bare by a child. And no matter how many official photos follow, that look will live on in memory. Why this moment will be remembered. In the long history of British royalty, from 1066's Norman conquest to the 1953 coronation of Elizabeth II, some moments are scripted and others are lightning strikes. What happened during the Royal Foundation Gala in May 2025 falls into the latter. It was not choreographed. It was not approved. It was not intended. And yet, it may become one of the most defining royal moments of the decade. The components were all there. A beloved future queen, a precocious princess, a crown steeped in symbolism, and a look that shattered silence. That look, Camilla's glance toward Catherine, loaded with 30 years of rivalry, redemption, and regret, didn't require words. It was recognition of loss, of displacement, of legacy reborn in someone else's hands. And the fact that it came from the innocent words of Princess Charlotte only made it more powerful. This wasn't about crowns or seating charts. It was about truth. The public saw what they've long suspected, that Catherine, not Camilla, carries forward the emotional and moral dignity once embodied by Princess Diana. And now that same truth is being spoken, not by critics or commentators, but by the next generation. In 60 seconds, Charlotte joined the lineage of royal women who shape history not through power, but presence. Years from now, when documentaries revisit the evolution of the monarchy, this moment will return. The tiara, the whisper, the glance, it will be remembered not for scandal, but for clarity. It reminded the world that royalty is not about title. It's about who carries the weight of memory with grace. And on that night, the crown may have rested on Camilla's head, but the future stood beside Catherine, whispering. One quiet whisper from a 9-year-old princess did what years of palace press couldn't. It exposed the fragile balance of legacy, loyalty, and public love. Charlotte didn't just speak her mind. She spoke for millions who still carry Diana's memory in their hearts. The look Catherine gave, the silence that followed, and Camilla's quiet retreat said it all. In that moment, history echoed, and the next royal voice of truth had arrived, wrapped in innocence and courage.